As we head into Season 4, looking ahead to naval combat, and I personally get set to move across the country, I wanted to take some time to respond to your burning questions. So no fancy intro today, but before we jump into your questions, if you enjoy in-depth reviews and discussions about all things Battlefield, drop a like and hit subscribe. First things first, guys, your questions are all genuinely solid. I've always been proud of my channel's older, more mature demographic, with its heavy skew towards people in their late 20s and 30s, and you can feel it in the questions. So, kicking things off with one of my favorite questions, do you think Levolution will make a comeback, and if so, what maps could benefit from it? First off, Levolution should have never left, not because it was like the greatest gameplay mechanic, but because it made Battlefield different. When you showed a Call of Duty player the Shanghai Tower collapsing mid-game back in 2013, that left a lasting impression on them. That literally could have been the defining moment they became a Battlefield fan. And today, we don't have moments like that. There's no genuine care to make the game different or more grand. Instead, EA has boiled Battlefield down to its basic parts and checked off boxes that could work for any military FPS. Or even worse, they've lost the technical ability to confidently pull these theatrics off. Battlefield 6 is as basic of a Battlefield game as possible, and even the devs are stumped by random issues on a monthly basis. Now, while Levolution should have been considered as the factor that makes things like RedSec unique to Battlefield instead of being a generic 2018-style Battle Royale, I think maps like Hagenthal having the ability for lights to turn on and off, thus players have to swap to night vision, or having a map like Manhattan Bridge bring back the Shanghai Tower collapse mechanic would be a fair use of the gimmick. However, I personally want to see the Battlefield 4 Flood Zone mechanic return, even if it's in a smaller way. Alright, moving on, what single change to Battlefield 6 would have the greatest overall positive impact? This is really tough, because Battlefield 6's issues are really death by 1,000 cuts. Ping, time nudge, TTK, hit reg, and stability all kinda snowball into a choppy experience that makes what might be great mechanics underneath suffer. From a player standpoint, the server browser, platoons, and stuff like the spectator mode will be great additions to the game's enjoyment, but realistically the biggest change I'd want to see is less clutter on the maps. There's so much trash, noisy textures, bushes, and so on, especially on maps like Bazaar, that if you take a look to like Battlefield 3 and 4, you'll realize why those games felt so much better. The maps were so much easier to read in real time. Outside of that, EA needs to let go of the Frostbite engine for real. 20 years later, it's still a laggy, buggy mess, costing the publisher in real time as they lose in the live service era. After Season 4 naval warfare is finished, what other types of maps should Battlefield 6 focus on for Season 5? Specifically, battle spaces like jungles, Arctic, trench warfare, etc. Funny enough, I was thinking about this yesterday while in the combat training POI on RedSec. Personally, I'd love to see them explore two different environments. First, more of North America. We get a little bit of California and some New York, but imagine LA, Miami, or Midwest military bases. Second, I want to see more military-focused areas as well. Imagine NATO bases, training grounds, and kill houses, and perhaps we can get a few smaller maps like a BF3 close quarters to bolster smaller modes for ranked and so on. Next, do you think they'll ever make music as good and impactful as Battlefield 5 for BF6? Personally, I hold Battlefield 1 as the gold standard when it comes to Battlefield's music. But whether it's BF5 or BF1, I don't think we're ever getting music like that again, because Battlefield won't ever tell human stories like that ever again. That music was very organic and told a story, while today, even Battlefield 6's music is all kinda meant to work as a looping loading screen, less so for narrative moments. Moving on, is there any game that plays like Battlefield? I suppose on a surface level, some people will say Delta Force, and Battlefield is closer than ever to Call of Duty. But the one thing that sets Battlefield apart, especially from games like COD, and the reason I prefer it, is, in the words of Enders, Battlefield is a position-centric shooter. Map knowledge, rock, paper, scissors decision-making, and problem-solving often trump aim. Thus, I find problem-solving with a squad, especially in smaller modes or RedSec, extremely rewarding. Thus, I really don't think any other game offers problem-solving, communication, and positional play like Battlefield. Call of Duty is all about quick aim, Apex and Titanfall are heavily movement-focused, and Milsim games like Insurgency are much more rigid in their combat, while Battlefield has always been a mix that rewards game knowledge, repositioning, and squad problem-solving. Now, onto our last Battlefield question: do you think snipers need flinch? In short, yes, if the devs are going to keep snipers this dominant and accessible at range, and then build haphazard no man's land style maps, especially in Battle Royale, there needs to be a range of options that help players find and hold snipers. I don't need my assault rifle to damage them, but I need to be able to see them and hold them via suppression or something like flinch. Essentially, while I don't think other guns should ever beat a sniper at range, the game needs to reward players who are keeping pressure on snipers and make snipers more situational tactical instruments instead of long-range delete buttons. Now, moving on, outside of Battlefield, what other genres do I play outside of FPS? It's really changed over the years. I grew up on Halo 3, Battlefield 3, and Star Wars Battlefront 2. But the original Forzas, MX vs ATV, and other racing games were huge, and sadly have all kinda died off. That also applies to Destiny 2, a game that is genuinely the reason I have the career I do. Destiny 1 was the final influence on me going to art school, and why I get paid good money telling visual stories today, just with athletes instead of games. Outside of that, I love a good single-player story like Cyberpunk, but also any kind of game you can play with friends, thus Helldivers, a Repo, Ready or Not, and so on. But survival games are probably the biggest genre I play out of FPS these days, like Ark Survival and State of Decay. And today's final question: if I was working at Ubisoft, what would I do to make the company better? To be honest, I think Ubisoft is a lost cause. The real change I think it needs is to go private under new ownership. The only reason it's still here is because out-of-touch investors care more about the names of IPs instead of the quality of the product. In reality, I'd handle Ubisoft similar to how Stellantis, the owner of Dodge and Jeep, are working to fix their brand. First off, freeze any new IPs. Next, evaluate and name our core Ubisoft experiences: Ghost Recon, The Division, Siege, Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, and so on, thus moving attention away from bullshit like Skull and Bones and back to things like Ghost Recon Project Over. Then from there, research the market, understand what franchises can satisfy what openings, and create timelines, assign studios, and share resources to stagger development one major IP at a time, to begin an annual or semi-annual cadence for major releases. Essentially, I have no idea how Ubisoft is lost when they own so many legendary IPs. There's so many options right in front of them. So while I'd like to say it's a matter of consolidating resources, I really don't think the suits that have their hands in everything really even understand how badly they're fucking up such an easy win. The real best case scenario is that Ubisoft goes bankrupt and is snatched up by someone like Microsoft, although Tencent would most likely take it over. But at this rate, I'm prepared to see Ubisoft cease to exist if they continually can't get a single game out the door. But guys, all great questions and thanks for joining in. I'll probably give this another shot again, but drop those comments below, and for everything else Battlefield and FPS, drop a like and hit subscribe, and as always, thank you guys for watching.